Hey guys, Nick from Arch City Poker and ArchCityPLO.com, and in today's video we're going to talk about trapping loose players when in position. So this idea came to me actually today when I had to implement this exact strategy a couple times, and this is a situation where theoretically you're going to be balancing your range by checking back some decently strong hands against better players. However, in live low stakes games where we don't really have to worry about balance quite as much, I think that's a situation where you're just going to want to bet more often. You're going to want to see bet your good hands more often because you're getting players to call and make a lot of calling mistakes. You're getting them to call at a much higher frequency than what they should be. But there is going to be a situation that comes up where you're playing against an aggressive player and you're going to want to deny these guys as much information as possible. And I've talked about that in videos before when we're out of position, why we want to check call against them a lot, or check our range, playing a check call or check raise. But you're going to want to check back some stronger hands in position when it's perceived that if you do check back, your range is going to be pretty capped. So let me give you the exact hand example that I had today. So loose player limps, and he is pretty aggressive. And I have ace-jack of spades in position. I raise, he calls. Flop comes, and I think there's a player maybe actually in between us. So it's three-handed, which actually even, it's going to further prove my point here. But flop comes ace 10-5 with two hearts, I believe. So couple checks to me, and a combo that I pretty much almost always should be betting, especially in this type of population where, again, I'm usually getting a lot of calls from players that are making calling mistakes. But on this particular texture, we're pretty deep. I don't think I'm getting 3 streets of value out of my particular villain in this spot. And I think there's value in essentially disguising my hand, in disguising my range, making him feel like I'm pretty capped in this spot. On this day in particular, I'm usually pretty aggressive, decently loose. I think my image was a little tighter, it was a little more card dead. So I took that into account as well. But I decided to check back because I felt like it was a situation where if he attacked, I had a profitable value raise, or I could call and then plan to value raise the river. If he checks again on the turn, though, I can go bet, meaning bet the turn and then bet the river, and likely get him to call with a much wider range. He might even try to raise me thinking I have a weaker range, and then I have a very profitable bluff catching situation myself. But I do check back, and I would say in that particular spot, the types of hands that you would want to use are going to be your top pair hands that are maybe lacking kicker strength. So in that particular spot, I think ace-jack is actually pretty strong and probably should still be bet most of the time. But if you did have, let's say, on ace 10-5 with the two hearts, so it's like a two-tone texture, let's say you did have some ace-jack, some ace-9, ace-8 suited, those would be hands that you could go ahead and check back. I also would check back hands that aren't as vulnerable, and I would say top set is actually a good one to check back. Now, you guys might be saying, Nick, you're nuts. That's the top of your range. It's the best hand you could have. You should be betting it. The thing is, when we have top set, we block a lot of their continues so hard as far as blocking top pair that it's actually a decent combo to check back. Now, if I have middle set or bottom set, I tend to bet those more often just because I'm unblocking top pair and I can get 3 streets of value out of a player and usually stack them in those spots, especially if it happens to be a looser player or a more aggressive player. But I would choose top set, and then I would choose like some of your like more marginal top pair hands, along with obviously the other hands that you're checking back that have some showdown value that might not be as good to bet with, like your pocket kings there, maybe some of your 10x. But I do decide to check back. And then ace 10-5, I believe the turn was actually deuce, just an offsuit deuce. They both check again, and so that's when I decide now delay c-bet should work very well. It's going to look pretty bluffy, especially if I bet larger just as an exploit, trying to make it look like I'm maybe stealing the pot. So I decided to pot it. I think I bet like $50 into 50 essentially, or 45 into 45. And he called, and when he looks at me, he actually gives me like the exact look like why are you betting now and betting so large? So he calls, the player in between us folds, and then the river is a board pairing 5. Could he have some 5x maybe, but he's got so many other pocket pairs and like 10x types of hands. He checks. I decide to go ahead and bet very large again. I bet just a little bit over the pot, and he snap calls, and I show my ace jack, and then he quickly mucks. So I just think it's a particular spot where you guys can trap loose players, especially aggressive players, in position by disguising your range a little bit and checking back some of those top pair combos that I talked about, and then even checking back some top set in that spot. And I would mix in some decent flush draws as well, just because you don't want to check back and then have, let's say, that flush completing turn come in and your opponent think that you can never have the flush. So there's a few different concepts going on here. Sort of theoretically, we're talking about balance, but I'm really talking about exploiting aggressive players for the most part by checking back some combos like that in this spot. So if you guys have any questions or comments, as always, let me know. Of course, hit the subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed to check out new videos coming up. And hit the link as well for archcityplo.com if you haven't visited the site. Still loading new content on there weekly. Tons of new awesome content on there, getting new members to start the new year here. So yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in the next video then. Thanks.